Yo, what's good, YouTube? It's your boy Pablo, and welcome back to GG Sports. I'm bringing you guys another episode of the Cincinnati Bengals rebuild here in Madden 19. And in this episode, we're getting into the NFL draft, so you definitely want to stay tuned. This is a very important episode because we're going to shape this team for the future in this one. But before we get into that and what else you'll see in this video, I want to remind you guys to leave a like and subscribe if you are new, and go ahead and hit that bell icon below the video so you stay notified every time I drop another one of these episodes. So like I said, in this one you will get the NFL draft, but before that we will recap the entire free agency. We'll see every signing made in the NFL this free agency period, and before that we'll get into the offensive players of the year, the defensive players of the year, and the rookies of the year. But if you want to go ahead and skip ahead to the NFL draft, that starts around 5 minutes and 58 seconds, give or take. So if you want to skip ahead, go ahead and click the timestamp that I have commented down below. But I definitely recommend that you stay tuned throughout the entire episode so you stay totally up to date on everything that happens in this franchise. But Tyree Jackson did finish third in Rookie of the Year for the AFC at least, and I think that's definitely something to build on as he's trying to recover from the broken toe that he sustained in the final game of last season. But Defensive Rookie of the Year is going to go to Devin White. But coming in at number 4, you see our rookie middle linebacker out of Clemson, Trey Lamar. And if you watch this series, you know he was a huge impact player for the Bengals defense, and he definitely played up to the expectations of a second-round pick. But we are finally getting kicked off with the recap of the free agency period. You have Kevin Byard going with the Buffalo Bills. You have Ndamukong Suh signing with the Dallas Cowboys. Xavier Howard signing with the Oakland Raiders. Logan Ryan also goes to the Buffalo Bills, so it's clear that they're trying to bolster their secondary. Lamar Miller actually signs with the Tennessee Titans, and Giovanni Bernard joins Tyler Eifert in Houston, along with this season's Coach of the Year Bill O'Brien, the MVP runner-up and Offensive Player of the Year Deshaun Watson. So they should definitely have an interesting team there in Houston. They already were 13-3 last season, just were not able to make it to the Super Bowl as they were eliminated in the divisional round by the Cleveland Browns, who, as you know if you watched the last episode, went on to win the Super Bowl. So I'm sure they're feeling okay with that. But Nick Foles, another signing there, he goes to the Chicago Bears. Josh Doxson doesn't move too far, goes to the Baltimore Ravens from the Washington Redskins. But as we scroll through the rest of these free agency signings, I'm just going to take a second to talk about my strategy going into this year's NFL draft. Last year, I gave myself a grade of a C+. I definitely want to beat that grade in this year's draft. I believe the only really good player that we got out of that draft, other than Trey Lamar, would be Cody Ford and Tyree Jackson. Some of the guys we got in the later rounds, like Drew Tranquill, Daniel Wise, CJ Conrad, some of those guys didn't really touch the field due to their overall. So this draft, I definitely made it a huge objective of mine to be more educated and have more players scouted. So I was faithful in my scouting. So I think we'll go into this draft a lot more educated. But just a side note on the free agency side, you did see Ezekiel Ansah actually went to the Chicago Bears in this franchise as well. But like I said, those guys in the later half of the draft did not really play too much. But even the guys that we got in the first half of the draft, like Cody Ford, did not really get better as the season went on. I believe we drafted Cody Ford at a 74, and I believe he's only at a 75, so he's not progressing as much as we would like. So that definitely puts the Bengals in a position where they still have to address the offensive line. We're not looking to bench Cody Ford, but maybe move him around. We want to draft another versatile offensive lineman who can move around and play multiple positions, because there are multiple holes on this Bengals offensive line. We were able to address left guard by signing Isaac Swumalo in the free agency, but he's only a 75 overall. We'll be hoping that he gets better. He's only 25, so hopefully he hasn't reached his peak yet and can still progress. But he is going to fill in the spot left by Clint Bowling, who actually left in free agency. So he'll be filling in for him. We still have Cordy Glenn at left tackle, Billy Price at center, who actually progressed quite well after going down in his rookie year, came back his sophomore year and really showed some improvement. And then at right guard last year, we had Jared Veldheer. That was definitely a band-aid, did not play very well, did not pan out for the Bengals, but we had to start him all year. It was either him or Trey Hopkins, and we definitely went with Veldheer as he was just a little bit better than Hopkins. It was really a lesser of two evils. But then at right tackle, we had Cody Ford, which showed to be a project offensive lineman. So our offensive line situation is pretty shaky right now, so we definitely need some real talent on the offensive line, an anchor, someone who could come in and be the same type of guy that Andrew Whitworth was for the Bengals. So all signs point to the Bengals trying to get that in the first round. But before we get into the 2020 NFL draft, we're just going to recap our free agency signings before the NFL draft. We were able to address the left guard position. As I mentioned, Clint Bowling left in free agency. So did Giovanni Bernard. He left for Houston. So we were able to sign Wendell Smallwood as a replacement for him. But we still will be looking to draft a running back in the later rounds to really solidify the backup running back spot, as Smallwood was only signed to a one-year deal. And then we also addressed the outside linebacker position with the big blockbuster signing of Zadarius Smith, as Nick Vigil left for the Dallas Cowboys in free agency. But the number one overall pick was Bryce Hall, the cornerback. He was selected by the Indianapolis Colts, and I definitely would have to say that's an interesting selection. I can't remember the last time a cornerback went number one overall, but we fast forward just a little bit here. We are now on the clock with pick number 19, and here I am taking a look at the quarterbacks that are on the board. I was tempted to take a first round talent because, to be honest, I'm not 100% sold on Tyree Jackson, especially coming back from injury. But I did pull myself back down to earth and say there are other things that this team needs other than a QB right now. We have a serviceable QB in Tyree Jackson. We'll let him prove himself. So we are going with offensive line. Like I said earlier, the Bengals needed an anchor, so I go with Alex Leatherwood out of Alabama. And he comes in at 304 pounds at 6'6". He's a power run blocker. In real life, he's actually moved over to tackle, so you could see the Bengals move him around on this offensive line. And he is an 80 overall, and he's one of the top offensive line prospects in the 2020 class. So we snag him with the 19th overall pick, and I think that's a spot where you can classify that as a steal. And to bring even more perspective to this pick, he is already the best offensive lineman on the Bengals roster and at least 6 overall points better than Cody Ford, who we drafted at the 11th overall spot last season. But in the second round, the Cincinnati Bengals select Darrell Taylor out of Tennessee. This is a player who comes in at 247 pounds at 6'4", an athletic speed rusher, led the Volunteers in sacks in 2018 with 8, really came out as an NFL prospect in the game versus Georgia, where he had 2 forced fumbles and a couple of sacks as well. And he's coming in at a 78 overall, and he likely will be the starting outside linebacker. He's a speed rusher. He's going to be opposite of Zadarius Smith, so we lock in 2 outside linebackers who will fit in very nicely in our 3-4 defense that we will implement next season. But with our first of our 2 third-round picks, it looks like we're going to select Jalen Hawkins, strong safety out of Cal, and he comes in at a 78 overall, and he will not start, but you have seen the Bengals do this in the past. Even if they have a safety who they're comfortable with, they will draft a player who they believe will be an impact player in the future. And I think this was the same type of situation with Jalen Hawkins as it was with Jesse Bates. And with our second third round pick, this is the one we got from the Saints in return for Andy Dalton, and it just so happens we turned that pick into a quarterback. We draft Sam Ehlinger out of Texas University. This is a player who Started off as a true freshman and has truly shown some impressive progression. In his sophomore year, he finished with 25 touchdowns to 5 interceptions and a 146 passer rating. And he's in the conversation for the Heisman Award race this upcoming season. So there are those people who believe he will be an elite quarterback, and that passer rating and those stats that I mentioned definitely point to that. So we're excited to have him in. I'm not going to speak on if he will be starting. It likely will be a competition, but let's just stay tuned and find out. We're excited to have a player of his caliber on the team. But in the 4th round, we are drafting Patrick Carr out of Houston, an elusive running back who I think really fits the mold of what we're looking for in the backup position. If you look at what Giovanni Bernard brought to the table, I think Patrick Carr definitely will be able to replicate that. And even if he shows he's not ready in the upcoming preseason, we still do have Wendell Smallwood, who we signed to a very short-term deal, just a 1 year. But we are now moving on to the 5th round, where we select Ladarius Mack. Yes, that is the brother of Khalil Mack out of Buffalo. He's going to join his former teammate Tyree Jackson, who just was drafted last season. And Ladarius Mack is going to be a Cincinnati Bengal. If he has any of the genes that Khalil Mack has, I think we'll be fine with this pick. But all jokes aside, he did grade very well at the combine, ranked very high there. So that's why we were comfortable taking a chance on him without scouting him. But moving on to the 6th round now, the Bengals are going to be drafting right guard Gage Cervenka out of Clemson. This is a player who also ranked very highly and graded very impressively at the combine. And we also scouted him. We had our eye on him. For him to be available in the 6th round, we thought that was a very good value spot for him. So we went ahead and took him. He may even end up starting. He's a 75 overall. He will be competing with Isaac Swamalo, who we just signed in the free agency, and we could move these guys around as well. But another pick in the 6th round, we're going to be drafting Denzel Mims, 6'3", 200-pound big play machine out of Baylor. He likely will be part of the crew that takes over the reins when AJ Green retires. But one of my favorite picks in this draft was the one we made in the 7th round, where we selected D'Eriq King, quarterback out of Houston, a quarterback who had 50 touchdowns in the 2018 season, truly flying under the radar. There are some questions about all the throws he's able to make. He's an explosive runner, very accurate deep passer, and I'm excited about having him on the team. He may not start, but may be a backup and may be a quarterback that we use as a utility player on offense, similar to how the Saints use Taysom Hill. But here is the NFL draft recap for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think we smoked this draft. I have to give this draft a B+. I think we were able to cover all of our needs, as well as add some depth in positions where we have aging players who will begin to regress soon. So anytime you're able to get players who will impact your team's success immediately, as well as add some pretty solid depth, I think that's a win. And I think we were able to do that. We covered the backup running back. We covered the offensive line. We got two very, very promising prospects for the offensive line. Then we also got a backup left end in Ladarius Mack. We got a backup safety for when Sean Williams begins to regress. And then we were able to get a couple of QBs to make our QB room very competitive this season, so stay tuned for that. But I have to give it a B+ because I did not address the tight end position. I definitely feel like we can have an upgrade over CJ Uzomah at some point, but for now he is serviceable and has some chemistry with Tyree Jackson, so that was enough to keep him a starter on our offense. But I also need to draft a defensive tackle, as Geno Atkins will be getting up there in age. We want to spend a high draft pick on his successor, so maybe not able to address that in this draft because there were more pressing needs. But next year you likely will see the Bengals use a day 1 pick on a defensive tackle. But that will conclude this episode of the Cincinnati Bengals realistic rebuild. and it actually will conclude our off season as well. So in the next episode, we'll finally be into the 2020 season fully. We'll be showing some preseason gameplay so you guys can see these rookies' skills on display. So you'll be able to see Sam Ehlinger, De'Aaron King, to see how those players perform, to see if Tyree Jackson has anything to worry about. So I hope to see you guys in that one. It'll definitely be an interesting episode. We're also going to make a few signings prior to the preseason with some young undrafted free agents. So hope to see you guys in that one. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.